Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. Today's topic in our series of talks on Indian spiritual heritage is God, Soul, World. It's a very important topic, as you can guess, because anyone who is interested in spirituality wants to know how that system perceives God, soul, and this world. And we have been telling this from day one. That means, of course, this is only the third talk. That when these sages went into the depths of meditation, they came face to face with the realities of God, that is creator, the created, and creation, that is God's soul and world. Now, before we continue with this talk, let me remind you of one very important fact which we mentioned earlier, that means in the previous talk, that when it comes to Hindu religion, that is Indian spiritual traditions, Hinduism runs at three levels. First is the society, that means the social practices. Of course, it comes only from spirituality. However, society being society, which is confined to time and space, that particular aspect, for example, we have been getting questions on caste system. This is the job of the constitution, and this is the job of the Indian Penal Code. Of course, now the name has changed. But for any country, these social practices have to be dictated by their constitution and the legal system. So that's not the job of Hindu spirituality. The second aspect is Hindu ritualistic practices, which is popularly known as religion. We had explained earlier that when sages go into the depths of meditation, and in other religions they are known as the prophet, they come face to face with God, and they also come face to face with spiritual realities that are related to the created beings, that is the soul, and creation itself, that is the universe. These are the spiritual truths, and these can be attained only through very deep meditation and by silencing the mind. There is no other option. Now, when these truths are applied to a particular society, so when spirituality, that means the reality about God, is applied to a particular society, say in India, it becomes its religious practices. And when it is applied, say in America, it becomes the religion of that land. It goes like that. Here, in this series of talks, it's not my job to explain the caste system, the social practices. We will just be hinting that, well, this is how the Hindus have continued with the practices. Same with the ritualistic practices. Say, for example, if you suddenly ask me, like, I had some questions regarding Gotra, which we had mentioned in the previous talk. Now, look, I'm not an expert on Gotra. If you go to a local priest, he will be able to explain that to you better. So, for example, right now, Kumbh, Mahakumbh is going on. So somebody asked me, what are the rituals that we need to practice for going to Kumbh? I said, I have no idea. Only the priests can tell that. That is their area of expertise. I can talk to you about the about the core spirituality, spirituality in its entirety, and its applied aspects as far as rituals are concerned and this society is concerned. But the detail, for that you have to go to the experts of that area. So I hope you will understand this, and you will not be coming up with the questions related to those two aspects. Now, coming to our subject. Every system of knowledge, whatever that system of knowledge be, whether that be science or philosophy or even literature, it has to explain three very important things: God, soul, that means the conscious principle that is within me, and the world. Now, when you look at all the knowledge systems that are there, the most important nowadays is, of course, science and materialism. Materialism, which has been taken up by, say, Marxists And nowadays, liberals, now I really don't know what is their philosophy because they call themselves liberal, but essentially, I mean, very difficult for me to understand what exactly they want to say. But materialism and any system based on materialism will not accept soul, will not accept God, because they will believe only in what they can experience through their five senses. Well, that's their understanding, and I'm not here to contradict them or support them. I'm just narrating how this system works. Then we have certain philosophical systems, including religion, which does not accept God as reality, and yet they are religious systems. Most important of that is Sankhya and Yoga. These two come from Hindu philosophical system. Sankhya, which was given by Sage Kapil, and Sage Kapil is known as father of Indian philosophy. He doesn't believe in controller God. He doesn't believe in a creator God. Nor does Yoga believe in a creator God or a controller God. That's a very, very interesting thing. And we will be seeing more of it when we go to the philosophy section or to the different sex sections. Similarly, we have, say, Buddhism. It's a religion, and that's why it's also known as ethical idealism. This name was given by Radhakrishnan when he, Dr. Radhakrishnan, when he wrote his book on Indian philosophy, and he called it ethical idealism, whatever that might mean, because it doesn't lay any stress on God. But later on, Lord Buddha himself was made God. And when it comes to soul, there isn't this idea of working soul, but not the permanence of soul. So, well, that's how the system works. Now, when it comes to the Indian spiritual traditions, which is our subject of study, the most important thing is that these words have come to us from various sages. Now, in contrast to this, we have religions which have come from more or less one single person, but not, of course, Judaism, because in Judaism, many prophets have contributed in the growth and consolidation of Judaism. However, if we want to separate Indian spiritual system, which has come from the sages, and for many, Lord Buddha was only a sage, and Mahavir Jain is treated as a sage. So we have two different kinds of religion. One that has monotheistic God. So we have four religions like Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Zoroastrianism that believes in one single supreme Lord. This is a very common thing that I think all of you know. And monotheistic gods can be extremely powerful. Sorry, followers of the monotheistic God. That means people who belong to monotheistic religions, they wield tremendous power because they have such conviction in their God that they end up being fanatics. And you'll be surprised to know that Jews, who are considered to be so mild these days, they used to be extremely fanatic in earlier days. And for the rest, well, you can have a look at the history. However, when you have a look at the monotheistic God, it actually creates lots of problems. The biggest problem is the problem of evil. Why do we do bad things? Why there is evil in this world? Now, dear audience, I'll request you to pay special attention to this particular path, because lots of questions are asked in Hindu religion which should be ideally directed towards monotheistic religions. These are not even our problems, as we shall see. So, problem of evil implies that there are two realities, two distinct realities. One is the good and there is the bad. For example, in Zoroastrianism, which has hugely influenced the other three monotheistic religions, which of course they will not accept. Those of you who are interested in knowing more about it can read my book, The World of Religions. My pen name is Samarpan. uh, it has a thorough discussion on 8 religions, the world of religions. You'll find it on Amazon, etc. Now you'll find that in Zoroastrianism, you have Ahirman and Ahurmazda. So these are two different forces, one representing the good and the representing the evil. And they are at constant fight, as we can see that we are constantly fighting against our own temptations. But when it comes to other monotheistic religions, they cannot say that the evil power is equally powerful as God. However, in reality, that is what it turns out to be. That creates a very serious problem with those of you who are interested in spiritual philosophy. If you study philosophies given by the Christian thinkers, particularly before the Renaissance, you find that they have been explaining only these things without much success, of course. Then there is the problem of merciful God and a just God, God who delivers justice and God who is merciful. See, you can go on writing books on how these things are reconciled, but the common sense says if I make a mistake, if my Lord is just, he will punish me. He cannot be merciful towards me. And if he is merciful, he cannot be just towards me. It's such a common thing. For example, you might have heard of a very famous expression that freedom and equality. We often talk about our society is based on freedom and equality. Freedom and equality, they can never coexist because the moment there is freedom, some will grow more, some will grow less. It's only when there is no freedom that people can be equal. Similarly, a merciful God and a just God cannot coexist. This is a very serious problem with monotheistic system of thought. Now, here, my goal is not to criticize any system. I'm just giving you a picture of Indian spiritual traditions in comparison to other systems. Then there is a very serious problem of God's will and free will. What is God's will and what is free will? Now, these questions have become pretty rampant in India too, without realizing that either it's all God's will or it's all free will. It's not part. It's not this much is God's will and this much is free will. I am laughing because it reminds me of one incident. Once I met somebody in Delhi and he was narrating how he had met some monk. And most of these monks, I mean, those who are preaching religion in India, they don't have understanding of religion. So he asked, Swamiji, could you please tell me what is the percentage of God's will as compared to self-will? So he said, give me some time. So after 7 days or 15 days came and he said, 2/3, 66.6% is God's will and 1/3, 33.3% is one's self-free will. When I heard, I just laughed and laughed. What kind of things you have been talking? However, in monotheistic religion, this will always be a problem. Because you see, the related problem is omniscience and omnipotence. Omniscience is God who knows everything. Omnipotent is one who is all powerful. Those of you who had some brush with Christianity, I am sure everyone had. You know that you have to obey the commands of God or of the church. And God is all knowing, God is all powerful, God is all merciful, God is love, God is this, God is that. Fair enough. Now, if I am doing something wrong and if I continue doing things wrong, then I will be sent to the hell. That's a very common perception. Even I knew these things when I was a kid. Now, God, if God is all knowing, he knows in advance that I will be doing something wrong. Like mom knows when the kid will be indulging in some kind of mischief. And a caring mom takes steps so that the kid doesn't go beyond a limit. God being all powerful, he can stop me from doing that. No, he doesn't stop me. Consequence, I continue indulging in wrong things, even though God already knows that I will be doing wrong things. And he doesn't stop, although he is all powerful. That means if I go to hell, not figuratively, in reality, then God knew in advance that I will be going to hell. That means he had decided, and that too for eternity. So if I am going to hell for eternity, God knew in advance and he could stop me, and yet he did not stop. Well, Christian philosophers have written hundreds of volumes on these contradictions. But actually, these contradictions can never be reconciled. No, they cannot be. These are the major serious problems with any monotheistic system of thought, particularly when it's coming from a single person. As compared to that, we have sages, as I mentioned. Sages, they went into the depths of meditation and told us about the reality. It's a wonderful thing. As we proceed, we shall be seeing how in the Vedas, sages have described God variously, lovingly, so caringly. And Indian sages also had a brush with monotheism. There was this god Varuna who had this monotheistic tendencies. But the sages gave that up, realizing that the inequalities that there are in this world cannot be explained through a monotheistic God. Anyway, before we proceed, a question may arise. Why should we believe? Why should we have faith in the words of the sages? A very fair question. Why should we? Okay, I agree there were sages, they were good people, maybe 5,000, 8,000 years ago they were there, and they said something, they experienced something. And why should we be accepting their words and how they are relevant? As for relevance, we had mentioned earlier that ultimately these principles that we have in religion give us peace, power, and prosperity. As for why should we have faith in the words of the sages, it's a very simple reason that our life runs on faith. When we were kid, we believed in the words of mom. When we grew up, we believed in the words of teachers. And many of you might have experienced how what you learned in your young days from your parents, from your teachers, many of those things have gone wrong. Now you realize that they are not right. Yet your life ran on faith. Even today, your life runs mostly on faith. So why can't we trust what the sages have said? We believe in what Darwin said. We believe in what Einstein said, because not everybody can understand what this theory of relativity is. We just believe what science says. So why can't we believe in the words of sages? Now, when it comes to the words of sages, one very important thing that comes to our mind is the famous dictum by Marx: religion is the opiate of the society. Now, if you think that sages have given us opium so that we can stay intoxicated, so that we become dumb. Actually, it's a fact. When it comes to the masses, particularly with the monotheistic religions, that indeed is a fact. But not in India. India is a totally different thing. See, as you merge more and more into it, you will enjoy. And dear listeners, trust me, you may not be able to understand everything that you are listening to right now. These all, one gentleman wrote me wonderfully that all his beliefs, etc., are getting a big jolt. It may be difficult for you to grasp things. Just listen, listen again, and keep listening. Listen to some more talks. Slowly you will find that things are becoming smoother. So, sages had certain qualities. First of them was that they were absolutely unselfish. Think of the life of Sri Ramakrishna, absolutely unselfish. Think of Jesus Christ, absolutely unselfish. When he was teaching religion, he was crucified. Think of Lord Buddha. He gave up his kingdom, howsoever small that was. So, why not listen to someone who is unselfish? In contrast, the politicians who are running the world, I told most of them are selfish people, and yet we are listening to them. And sages were learned, particularly in India, Indian tradition. It was compulsory for them to know the Vedas. They were learned. And most importantly, they were contemplative. These three qualities, if you are unselfish, if you are learned, and you are contemplative, no one can beat you. Whatever your field of activity, you may be a scientist, you may be a poet, you may be a writer, whatever your field of activity, you may be a film actor. Does not matter. You may be a sports person. No one can beat you if you have these three qualities. You are unselfish, you are learned in the subject that you are handling, and you are contemplative. A contemplative mind is an extremely powerful mind, as we shall see. Now, when it comes to spirituality, their words have been verified any number of times. That means what the Vedic sages said have been experienced by the sages of later period too. And most importantly, you too can realize it. Openly they openly say, you too can realize it. Here lies the ultimate test of truth. For example, in some system, they'll say that, well, I know it, but you cannot know it. And what I'm telling you is the truth. That's not how India runs. No, no, no. India doesn't run that way. Here it is. I have realized it. You too can realize it. Um, for example, in Shvetashvatara Upanishad, which belongs to Ved, it says, Vedahametam Purusham Mahantam. I have seen that great truth. And there is no way out unless you too see it. When Swami Vivekananda, who was at Narendranath, went to meet Sri Ramakrishna and asked, have you seen God? Sri Ramakrishna said, yes, I have seen. And I can make you also see God. Here lies the test of truth. So well, why should we believe in the words of the sages? But most importantly, there are three tests of truth in Indian spiritual system. First is known as Shruti. Shruti means that it must have a precedence. Whatever you are talking, for example, some sage, like nowadays with social media and a lot of money rolling around in India, many are becoming sages. Even some of these film stars who have no idea about what religion is, they are becoming sages. It gives you instant fame. However, when you claim that you know a particular spiritual truth, there must be a precedence. Those of you who are familiar with the current Indian traditions, you might be knowing of some sages who claim that they have not studied Vedas and Upanishads and like that. No, we don't. We don't approve of such persons. Whatever you are talking, it must have a precedence. This may not be true in science. For example, when Einstein talked about theory of relativity, when he gave us a different perspective on time and space, it was absolutely new. Now that's permitted because the world of matter, but in spirituality, there must be a precedence. And second is, it must be logical. You cannot say something which is illogical. Third, it should be anubhuti. Anyone can verify it. Shruti, Yukti, Anubhuti. These are the three very interesting terms that you should keep in mind. That somebody says that, for example, let me, of course, now that gentleman is not alive, so I can say there was Mr. J. Krishnamurti. He was very famous philosopher, whatever he was. He was a good, very good talker. And he has many books, and even many monks of the Ramakrishna mission were admirers of Krishnamurti. And he used to say that that Guru, he didn't believe in the Guru system. Perfectly all right for him not to believe in Guru system. But we don't have a precedence. It is not logical. And it's not verifiable. Now, what is true for you may not be true for me. Then it is not spirituality. Then it is not spiritual. Then it belongs to the world of matter. Your son is your son. He is not going to be the son of everybody in the city where you live. But when it comes to spirituality, it has to be universal. That's a very, very important thing. Now, from here, we move to the idea of God. Before we give you the essential points of how India sees God, let me narrate how Sri Ramakrishna, whom we treat as avatar, incarnation of God, and not everyone will accept, but that doesn't matter. Sri Ramakrishna, he had some basic ideas about spirituality. Having grown up in the Indian traditions, it was normal for him to know a lot of things. And when he was barely 17, 18, he came to Kolkata in search of some job with his elder brother. And then he became a priest at Dakshineshwar Kali temple. These are all well recorded and you can read. Those of you who are interested in foreign writers, you can read beautiful book by Roma Rolla. Otherwise, we have wonderful books from Advaita Ashram, Kolkata, and Chennai, Mylapore, Ramakrishna Math. You can read any of those. So wonderful books there are. And then he got truly curious about the nature of God. And he became extremely intense about it. And then he had Guru Mantra. It was given by Kenaram Bhattacharya, Kali Mantra. He was his guru of traditional guru in the Kali Mantra. Sri Ramakrishna had many gurus. Kenaram Bhattacharya was one of them. So he was into doing japam and meditation, and he was deep into it. And then his longing for God realization increased, and he became desperate. And finally, a day he said he wanted to end his life. Don't ever try such things, because you will only end up ending your life. His mind was pure, he was ready for it, and he had the experience of supreme consciousness in the form of Mother Kali. Please remember this very important statement. It was not Mother Kali as if appearing like a magic. It was not some kind of a magic show. It was not something like I'm sitting here and somebody appears before me magically. It was the knowledge of supreme consciousness known as Brahman or Atman or Satchidananda in the form of Mother Kali. And this continued till Totapuri, who initiated Sri Ramakrishna in Vedanta sadhana, came. When Totapuri came, he taught him Advait sadhana. Actually, Advait sadhana is a very difficult thing. Imagine Sri Ramakrishna, who was not even willing to go for Advait sadhana, and when he tried Advait sadhana, he couldn't succeed. And nowadays, of course, we have teachers talking about big things about Advait and Vedanta. And God knows where these people are heading to. Now, Sri Ramakrishna could not, because Mother Kali, who is the ultimate reality in this relative world within the empires of the mind. Now, what is Mother Kali? Mother Kali is your chosen deity appearing as Mother Kali. It can be Sri Rama, it can be Sri Krishna, it can be God of Jesus, Christianity, it can be Jehovah of the Jews. Being the supreme reality, supreme spiritual reality in this relative world, you won't need to get out of it. There is no need, in fact. So Sri Ramakrishna said, well, I'm not able to contemplate on one undivided consciousness. Well, Todapuri was angry. He picked up one piece of broken glass and pierced between his eyebrows and said, "Focus on this pain." Sri Ramakrishna focused. Now, Mother Kali appeared once again, and this time said in his own words, the sword of knowledge, whatever that might mean, and cut Mother Kali into two pieces, essentially meaning that his mind, which in the ultimate state of concentration was one with the supreme consciousness as Mother Kali, was torn apart. Now, there was no need for even that thin film, thin film of the mind which appeared as Mother Kali, and his mind was lost in the absolute. Those of you who are listening to it for the first time, I'll request you to listen to this part again, again, and again. When you do sadhana, your sadhana has to be in the form of Ishta mantra, repetition of Ishta mantra, japa, and focusing your mind on that which is known as dhyan. When you have done it for years with intensity and with utmost devotion, your mind may become so focused that ultimately you will have the realization. Mind is not vision. Vision is a wrong thing. Visions, visitations, which have been made pretty popular by the Christian traditions, these are, don't mind my words, but the fact is, in most cases, these visions are case of mental derangement. They need psychiatric help. When you have real God realization, your life changes, life of those around you changes completely. You become a powerhouse. You know the truth. Your mind will never again go towards the world. And as far as God is concerned, is the highest spiritual reality that can be perceived through the mind, where nothing else exists, only a faint sense of I, me, the devotee, that exists, nothing else exists. When that too breaks, then only you have the knowledge of absolute, undivided consciousness, where there is no I, there is no you, it's pure consciousness. You can be one with it. You cannot know it, because to know something, you need to have your mind. This mind itself is now dissolved in pure consciousness. That's why it's very often known as the state of no mind. This is a very, very, very important thing to understand everything that we are going to discuss now. With this idea explained, you will naturally say that it means that what Sri Ramakrishna saw as Mother Kali experienced, and his knowledge of Advaita, these are the ultimate truth. No, not everyone will accept. For example, in India also, we have certain sects, some Vaishnava sects and some Shaiva sects. They will say that only their Ishta exist. And we will be discussing why they discuss like that. So in India, you have different kinds of understanding of spiritual reality. But for you, it's very important to know that spiritual reality is both formless, as experienced by Sri Ramakrishna in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Nirvikalpa Samadhi is a technical term which means when your mind ceases to function in any form. In that state, the pure mind is one with pure consciousness. This is the relationship between mind and consciousness. And that same mind, for whatever reason, we don't know why exactly it happens, how it exactly happens, and there is no answer to it. No answer to it. If the I consciousness remains, Sri Ramakrishna repeatedly says, this can remain only with the specially chosen ones whom God chooses to be his instrument to preach spirituality. For them, they are back to that faint sense of I-ness. And now they can experience God. In nearly every case, the spiritual realization ends with realizing God in this state where your sense of I remains. Every religion other than pure Advait of Hinduism, is essentially about this aspect of where sense of I remains. That's why Jesus talks about he is the Son of God. Someone else says prophet, the last prophet. Someone says this, someone says that. But ultimately, the bottom line remains that. Now, when it comes to Lord Buddha, he actually talks about Advaita, state of Advaita. But his followers made a mess of it. That's the only word I can use about them, and saying that it's all shunya. Whereas the world becomes shunya, mind becomes shunya. Pure consciousness is ever present, will continue to remain present. But if they accept that, then Buddhism merges into Hinduism, that they will never let. Well, that's how things are. Now, coming to Indian spiritual traditions, how India treats God, this elaboration of or narration of Sri Ramakrishna's divine experiences makes it absolutely clear. When you go through the Indian spiritual traditions, we treat God as infinite in the truest sense of word. When you use the word infinite, normally by infinite we mean large, very large. Say, for example, ocean or sky, like that. No, God is not like that. God is not very large. In fact, in most religions, when they talk about God being infinite, they mean to say that God is very large, very powerful. No, it's not. Secondly, when we talk about infinity, we mean to say that indescribable. That means it's beyond comprehension. This usually happens in physics and mathematics, etc. God is not that. God can be experienced. And you know that God is not very big. He is the existence. So there is a fundamental difference between the understanding of infinity by the Hindus and by other religious systems and other knowledge systems. This is a very crucial difference. In most cases, when they talk about God being infinite, they are talking about materialistic sense of infinity. They are actually objectifying infinity. It's a very interesting term, objectifying infinity. And if you have a chance to study comparative religion, you will see that not the prophets are not responsible for it, their followers, because their understanding is meager compared to their prophets. So they objectify the infinite and the mess is created. Now, God being infinite, as described in Hindu religion, God can have infinite forms. Because you are looking at God, you are trying to perceive God through your mind. If your mind is different, of course, your mind is different from mine. So your perception of God will be different than what I have. Isn't it such a simple logic? It's no rocket science. It's not even computer science. It is absolutely plain and simple. And dear listeners, the most difficult truths to grasp are those which are very simple. One name of God is Sahaj. Sahaj means simple. And we cannot grasp the truth of God simply because it's so simple. God is infinite. Now, when infinite minds look at God, there will be infinite number of gods. And that is what we do. Others do not have. For others, it's one God. He alone is the true God because unknown to them, they have objectified their God. This is the truth, basic truth. But they won't understand if you try to make them understand. Even the idea of infinity was not there in the Western world. And yet, in India, we have been chanting it since ages. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate. We will have this mantra when we enter the Vedic section, when we start explaining the Vedas. We have known the very concept of infinity. What is infinity minus infinity? The Hindus will say infinity minus infinity is infinity. But common understanding will say that infinity minus infinity is zero. Here lies the crux in understanding spirituality. If you think that infinity minus infinity is zero, you are objectifying infinity. If you say that infinity minus infinity is infinity, then you are able to grasp the idea of infinity. In spirituality, infinity means everything is infinity. The souls are infinite. Creation is infinite. It continues for eternity. Infinity means infinity. The part of infinity, the smallest part of infinity is also infinite. And that is why my Atman, that the soul within me is infinite. Because there is no part in infinity. Infinity can never have parts. Infinity will always be infinite. So, how to realize that infinity? Through infinite paths. It's a very wonderful book, Infinity Hotel. And because of the lack of time, I cannot go on explaining. It gives a very wonderful example of what is the true implications of infinity. So there is an infinity hotel. It makes infinite loss and pays infinite tax, and even then it makes infinite property, infinite profit. These things are very difficult to understand. Yet this is the nature of infinity. But when it comes to spiritual infinity, what I have been telling you is the most important thing, that the smallest part of infinity is infinity. And it will appear in infinite forms to infinite minds. And there will be infinite paths to reach that infinite. This has been the traditional method in the Indian spiritual traditions. As we proceed through Vedas, Upanishads, Puran, Mahabharata, you will see this thing coming repeatedly. Infinite paths through infinite gods to that infinity, which is beyond 0 and 1. For some of you, it may be difficult to understand what's the meaning of Advaita, which is beyond 0 and 1. We will be discussing more of it. And I request you to hold on to the entire thing. You cannot learn, you cannot grasp everything in one talk. Please have patience, keep listening. And if you can complete the HE talks, the 2-year course, you will really have learned something. That I promise. So, this the term for this infinity in the Vedas is Purusha, because Purusha in Sanskrit, every word has a special meaning which signifies what it is. Purusha means that which resides in the city. Like our body, it's like a city. So Purusha. Later, the Upanishads came up with more functional words called Brahman, the largest, Atman, that which resides in everything, meaning the same. And Atman is Brahman. So, God is both infinite and finite. He can appear in any form he wishes. And you can reach him in infinite number of ways. So you cannot say that my path is correct and your path is not correct. You cannot say that Shiva is the real God and Krishna is not. Similarly, Vaishnavas cannot claim Vishnu to be the only reality as compared to Shiva, etc. The next very important thing about God is Om. Om is a combination of 3 sounds, not letters, sounds. A, U, Ma. Sometimes it's written as OM. Now, in transliteration system, it's written as OM, but in the broken form, it's written as AUM. The God can be called by any name. And we know that different religions have different names. But the best word that truly represents God is Om. Why? Because God is the substratum of everything that is there in the universe. So here is this pen. God is the substratum of this pen too. Now think of all the objects. Whenever you think of object will have a name. It will have a word for it. And whatever the name, whatever the word, every word in this universe by any creature can be squeezed between three sounds. Aw, which is guttural. Aw comes out from here. Ooh, the rolling sound. Ma, it stops at lips. So, a, u, ma, these three sounds lock the entire sound system. Every word that can be, every sound that there can be is locked here in a, u, ma. So it's the matrix of a, u, ma. Om is the matrix of all the names. And the entire universe has a equivalent name. And for mind, objects, ideas, and names, they are one and the same thing. So when you say sugar, you start salivating. You say pickles. Now, when we were kids, you say tamarind. The moment you think of tamarinds, the kids love tamarind. You start salivating. Why? There's no tamarind before you, just tamarind. Because mind cannot distinguish between objects, words, and ideas. For mind, they are all one and the same. So Om represents the created universe. We will have more of it when we discuss the Upanishads or maybe when we discuss Om and Gayatri. In brief, Om represents the created universe. The silence that follows after Ma represents the formless aspect. So Om represents God with form and also the formless one. So that's why every sacred mantra in India, including in Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism, begins with Om. So Buddhists may have quarrels with Indian system, Hindu system, and Jains may have, and now the Sikhs have started having objections. But they all accept Om as a sacred symbol. Similarly, different sects in India may have quarrels with each other, like Shaivas and Vaishnavas, they are constant at quarrel. But Om is common to all of them. Then we have, of course, Bij Mantra, that we will discuss in Tantra when we discuss Tantra, and that will take some time. Next point is Shakti, God's power. We believe that God and his power, they are one and the same. Person and his power, object and his power, fire and its burning power, water and its power to wet, they are one and the same. You cannot distinguish one with the other. So God and his power, they are one and the same. They are not separate. This power, the divine power of God, is mostly described as feminine. Now, why? Well, very, very difficult to say. Traditionally, it has been going on. And this, it's known as, variously in Vedanta, it says Maya, Shakti, Prakriti, etc. Now, when there is this creation, it's through this power that the absolute supreme consciousness, which is known as Brahman, now appears as Brahma, Vishnu, or Shiva. These are the three famous gods in Indian tradition. Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the sustainer, and Shiva is the destroyer. In reality, all three are one. But when seen from the aspect of the activity that they perform, they become separate. As mentioned, There are infinite forms of God. He is Shiva, he is Krishna, he is Vishnu, etc. But for a person, for you, your Ishta means your guru gave you a particular form of God. You meditate on this. He is the dearest and he is the truest for you. So, for example, those of you who have been initiated, say in Lord Shiva's mantra, you have to believe that he is the truth. As for other gods are concerned, they are also his form only. See the relation. You don't say that Shiva is the God. Don't say that Shiva is the only God. You say that Shiva is my Ishta. For me, Shiva is everything. When it comes to other forms, they are all one and the same. But for me, Shiva is the God. Now, you cannot impose your thing on others. You cannot say that your son has to be treated as a VIP by everybody in your city. Your son is your son. Your husband is your husband. Your wife is your wife. You do not go on sharing it with others. Just like that. Your Ishta is your Ishta. You cannot go on imposing your Ishta on others. This is where every religion, every sect makes the mistake. They are all forms of Satchidananda when seen through mind. Your Ishta is your dear Lord, to be treated in a very special way by you. Oh, here is a question by Rashmita. Those who have not been initiated, well, if you have not been initiated, dear, uh, please stop it. Just forget it. We will discuss it. No, no. See, if you ask me, I belong to a tradition where initiation is very important. You remember we had mentioned Jati Dharma, Kula Dharma, Varna Dharma, Varnashram Dharma, and either you have to be initiated by your Kula Guru, that is family traditions, or you have to get a guru. Now, if you say that you can be an independent spiritual aspirant as Prophet Muhammad was, no, no, no. There might be one or two cases you might have done, but in general, that's not possible. And if you ask me personally, it's not possible. And those of you who are preaching otherwise, they are misleading you. Trust me. Those who say that they have not taken any diksha, they have not studied Vedas, etc., etc., they are misguiding you. Ande naiv niyamana yatanda, the blind leading the blind. It is simply not possible. Those of if somebody tells you that meditate on Om, meditate on Atman, say I am Atman, nothing will happen. Do it for 10 years, and then you will come and say, Swamiji, you were correct. See, I belong to this tradition. And personally, I am telling you, I've been with the Ramakrishna Mission now for around 50 years. I've been with the best of the monks. I have studied under them, and I've been into it, as they say. I know the subject. If I say it won't work, it won't work. Emotionally, you may feel, yes, it will work. Practically, it won't work. For example, when people teach you meditation, what exactly they teach you? Just how to relax, how to sit silent. Is that meditation? Meditation is about knowing God. Meditation is about knowing yourself. When we study Raj Yoga, you will see. They will just add, oh, just say Om. Meditate on Om. You won't understand anything. See, if you have to focus on spiritual truths, it simply means that you have to focus on pure consciousness. And somebody has to train you into that, has to give you some mantra, has to teach you some process. Now, those who are teaching through cyber world, social media, and YouTube, no, that is not the way to growth. See, you cannot become a scientist just like that. No, you cannot. You cannot become a medical doctor just like that. How do you expect to become a sage? How do you expect to become a saint just by reading the posts on social media and listening to some talks on YouTube, etc.? That's not possible, because being a scientist is much easier than being a sage. And to know the spiritual truth means to be a sage. Mark my words. And then there is this concept of avatar, which is unique to India. Although we have, no, 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 please, please do not go keep on asking questions. Please do not keep asking questions. So we have this concept of avatar. When Satchidananda, the absolute, the pure consciousness, he appears in some form, human or otherwise, because we believe in Indian traditions that God, being all powerful, being infinite, can appear in any form. That's why we have Varaha avatar when God came as a boar, then Matsya avatar when God came as fish. These are the general understanding. When God comes as an avatar, he's special. He's not like a saint, he's not like a sage. Like sage Kapil, he has been described in Bhagavatam as an avatar. But by the time we reach the age of Sri Ramakrishna, the idea of avatarhood becomes much more clear. First, when an avatar comes, there is a spiritual renaissance in the society. It's not ordinary, like if you have some sage, for example, best example is Tulsi Das. Now, Tulsi Das gave a spiritual identity to the entire Hindi belt, but it was not a spiritual renaissance. Now, whenever an avatar comes, incarnation comes, spiritual renaissance comes. There is an evolutionary push, or you can say evolutionary pull, because otherwise the beings, living beings, they are locked in the trajectory of their own species. They are pulled up. How do you know that a person is a saint or an avatar? Well, I may not be able to know, you may not be able to know, but they can be known. How? They can appear physically, transcending time and space. They can appear in your meditations directly. They can teach you directly, and your life will change. There's a very beautiful example. Phalena Parichyate, a tree is known by the fruits. If you want to know that if a person is an incarnation, catch hold of one of his disciples, the best disciple, of course, not the rotten ones. Catch hold of some of his best disciples. See how powerful he is. Then he will know whether or not he was God. Jesus Christ, his disciples, they are amazing, so powerful. And Jesus says, come, I'll make you powerful. The words are different. Same with Sri Ramakrishna, see his disciple. See Sri Krishna, his disciple. Sri Rama's disciple was Lakshmana. So like that, of course, now those stories are lost in history, so we cannot discuss much. However, let's take the case of Sri Rama. There have been hundreds of people who had spiritual knowledge of Sri Rama and spiritual experiences of Sri Rama. A sage cannot do it. The difference lies in spiritual power. A saint is somebody who can cross over, who can influence you, but he can influence 2, 3, 5, 10 persons, but he cannot bring spiritual renaissance. And I won't name sages and this thing because these things become quite emotional issues, emotive issues, so I want to avoid. Then there is this creation. We need to discuss creation, Jivatman. I think our time is nearing, so let me explain Jivatman. No, creation is very important. In creation, we have two approaches. Uh, Close it, close it. We have two approaches. They come from various various prayers that we have in the Vedas. One is the impersonal aspect, and there is the personal aspect. Nasadiya Sukta gives us the impersonal aspect where creation evolves. We will have more of it when we discuss the Vedas. And the second one is the personal aspect, the popular perception that we have regarding God creating the universe. This is the creationist, this is known as creationist approach, where God creates like an artist. When an artist creates, say, a tree, flowers, and fruits, he can create any part first and second part later. But in evolutionary aspect, one thing follows the another. In the world of religions, you have both, but mostly when it is about monotheistic religion, they follow creationist approach. In India, we have both the approaches. How the creation proceeds? The popular belief is that when God wanted to create, this is the creationist approach that we are discussing. As for evolutionary aspect, we will discuss that in detail in Nasadiya Sukta. If you are interested in knowing about this Nasadiya Sukta, go to our YouTube channel, Indian Spiritual Heritage, and find the playlist Ved in English, and you will find there Nasadiya Sukta. You can listen in advance. Of course, we will be discussing in this series of talks too. So he said that the impersonal, absolute one God, he now appeared as God with form, and this is known as Narayana. Because to create, he created the cosmic waters. Cosmic waters. The Sanskrit term for that is Nara. Nara means cosmic waters. And he slept there. And then from he became Brahma, and he now is Brahma, the creator. And then Brahma started creating the universe. It's a long story. We'll be discussing when we discuss Puranas. And then he started creating. The first creation were four Kumaras, Sanak, Sanandan, Sanatan, Sanat Kumar. They were so full of noble qualities that they gave up the world and became monks. And that's how the tradition of the monks continue even today. Then Brahma continued to create by the power of his mind, and many sages came out of that. But the process was so slow that he decided to split himself into two, male and female. So male and female are equal in Hindu religion. That's why we call it Ardhangini. We don't say better half or lower half, this half. They are all same. Or Ardhanarishwar, we have this concept of half male, half female. So there is no concept of better half. It's equal half. So once there was male and female, creation spread rapidly. And that's how human beings and others spread. These are, spiritual stories, and we cannot say which one is correct, which one is not. Now, when the creation was there, the consciousness which we mentioned earlier, the infinite, which is known as Purush, which is known as God, is now in every living being. In fact, in everything that is there, in every atom, that same pure consciousness is there, because consciousness has no part. Thus, conscious principle which is within me, which is within you, is known as Atman. And because this Atman mistakenly identifies itself with the body, mind, ego complex, there's a term for it which is Jivatman. In reality, Jivatman is same as Atman. Atman is same as Brahman. Brahman is the absolute non-dual consciousness. It has been a common practice nowadays to mistake soul with Atman. Now, the spiritual reality say in Christianity is soul. Soul. But soul has materialistic limitedness. It's limited. As compared to God, as compared to the supreme reality, it's limited. Atman is unlimited. Jivatman is also unlimited, but because of its foolish identification with body and mind, it thinks that it is limited. So there is a fundamental difference between the Western concept of soul and the Indian concept of Atman. Although many mistakenly use two words interchangeably. Swami Vivekananda used the word soul, but that is because the American audience had no idea about what is Atman and Jivatman. So when he says each soul is potentially divine, he means to say that each Jivatman is potentially divine, because soul can never be potentially divine. Even if it's potentially divine, it will go to heaven. It cannot be one with God in the sense that Atman is. So here we have creation, here we have God, and here we have Jivatman. Now, Jivatman, because it identifies itself with the body, mind, ego, it keeps on moving various spheres. These spheres are known as loka. Lokas. Lokas means that which can be experienced. Each lok, for example, we have Bhulok, which is on this earth, Bhuvalok, mid region, we have Swaha, Jana, Maha, Tapa, Satya. These are different lokas. So, souls which have similar tendencies, similar powers, similar knowledge, they kind of accumulate in various lokas. When you say that the highest lok, which is Satya lok, is kind of highest heaven, the way the Christians talk about going to the heaven. But our goal is not to end up even in the highest heaven. The ultimate goal of Hindu religion is to make a person free. What makes the soul travel from loka to loka? Karma. The famous law of karma you might have heard. Here it needs some explanation. Karma is the force. Karma is the force that makes soul I am using for our convenience, because you may not be used to hearing this word Jivatman. So let's call it soul, which is the embodied conscious principle within every being. It's a psychic force. Karma is a psychic force. Whatever you do, whatever you speak, whatever you act, thinking, speaking, action. These three leave a mark on your psyche, on your mind. And because your soul has identified itself with the mind, the soul will be hugely affected by what you have been doing through rebirth. Because once you have Jivatman, once you have this kind of world, and once you have karma, rebirth becomes a reality. We will be discussing of rebirth, etc. And please do not ask too many questions, because see, Hinduism is too vast a religion. It's like a huge ocean. Compared to that, other religions are just like pond. Now, you cannot expect to know about everything about Hindu religion in one class, and you cannot have all your doubts cleared in one talk. So please have patience. Now, whatever you do, it will fructify in this birth or in the later birth. From this, people somehow got confused with the idea of karma, and they got the concept of kismat from foreign religions and superimposed or imposed on Hindu religion. Kismat, fate. We don't believe in any fate. Hindus do not believe in any fate. Please mark it. So all these things that you have been listening about Hinduism is all wrong. What the Hindus say, for example, what you are today, right now what you are, is the outcome of three different forces. First is what you have done in the past lives, and that which is working out right now. Second is what you have been doing in this life, because your appearance in this world is through your parents. So you have been doing certain acts. These two combined. And third is acts of others. For example, you are what you are, And here I am talking. I'm giving you some knowledge. And now when people talk about, oh, God has willed like this, etc., we will explain why these are not true. Three forces make you what you are. First, what you have done in the past. Number two, what you are doing in the present. Number three, what others are doing on you. So, the Prime Minister of India is directly responsible for shaping my destiny. I cannot go on telling that, well, it's all because it was in my kismat, in my fate. No. Three different forces work together. When there is freedom, when there is mukti, all these forces cease to exist forever. Nothing can touch you. This law of karma is actually a model. It's like a model. It explains our existence and this world most beautifully. Why? If you do not accept law of karma, then you have two options. First is God does everything, as we hear from spiritual masters. But then God becomes partial. Then God becomes responsible for the inequalities that is there in the universe. You will say, then why Sri Ramakrishna used to say, well, that's a different topic we will discuss at some other point of time. But when you have a dualistic approach to this world, when you say this world is true and God is true and God is dictating things, then God becomes partial. It is utter nonsense. Second is chance. Whatever is happening to me, it's all chance. Well, then we are left to the brute, blind forces of nature. It's such a terrible life then. This cannot be accepted. When you have law of karma, it gives you hope. Some people say that Hinduism is a pessimistic religion. Hinduism is the only optimistic religion. Why? First, you realize that God is not partial. Second, nature is not powerful over you. Third, you can change your future anytime you want, anytime you can want. As body, as a physical body, you are limited. As mind, you are super powerful. You just have to grow. You just have to wake up the power of your mind. You become super powerful. And as Atman, which is your reality, you are God. You are one with God. You have all knowledge. You have all power. You have everything. And this is what Hinduism teaches you. Be free. Swami Vivekananda repeatedly says, be free. Right now, we are identified with our body. At best, we are identified with our mind. What Hindu religion teaches you is take up some support in the form of your Easter, in the form of some sadhana. Outgrow the limitations set by nature on you. Outgrow your identification with the body. Outgrow your identification with the mind. And you will know that you are all free. But more interestingly, you realize that you were always free. The bondage was an illusion, this world was an illusion, but more of it when we discuss the Upanishads. More than this concept of mukti, freedom, we have this Jivan Mukti where it says that you can attain this freedom even while alive. Jivan Mukti, you are alive and you can attain this. This is absolutely unique of Hindu religion. This idea that you can attain freedom, you can attain mukti here, now. This is not to be found anywhere. In every other religion, of course, in Buddhism, there is this idea of nirvana, but in general, in every religion, is you die and you go to heaven. Hinduism is the only religion which does not say that you have to die to attain mukti. You can attain it here and now. And indeed, that is the ultimate goal of Hindu religion, to make each one of us not only free, feel free here and now, which is Jivan Mukti. So here we end. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, you can ask quickly because we have overshot today's program by 15 minutes already. And the paper, etc. will be sent to you. Thank you so much. Om Shanti Shanti. So, well, what's the question? Go below. Vikram, go below. Is Advait well? No. Advait is not monotheistic. Uh, my God, that means PB, whosoever has written this, is Advait Vedanta monotheistic? My God, whoever gave you this idea. In India, no religious system is monotheistic. Sorry, none. Advait is non-dualistic. Monotheistic means one God. I don't know who is this PB. Could you please write your full name? This is pathetic. Howsoever, there is no concept of monotheism anywhere in India. Nowhere. Monotheism is the product of Israel. This is not our Israel and Iran, you can say. That means Zoroastrianism and Judaism. If yoga philosophy doesn't believe in God, then who is the Paramatman, which is the Jivatman years to yoga itself, bro? Well, that is the Tantra concepts, whosoever Samsung, SM, whosoever you are. Sri Ramakrishna talks it from the Tantra standpoint of view, from the yoga standpoint, Paramatman and Jivatman, etc. They are not in Patanjali's yoga. It's in the Tantra tradition, not in yoga tradition. Between us and a Jad is only that we can catch Atman as the Atman is present. Oh, well, Swamiji, yes, Devjit was what. Thank you so much. Thank you. We meet again later.